So the only other scenario that we have to go through is a supply increase. So if the government was looking at lifting a quota that they had, if they had put in place that you could only produce so much corn, if they were looking at lifting that, what they would do is they would conduct this analysis in order to figure out who that would help and who that would hurt. So lifting the quota would mean we would see an increase in supply. So we would have a new supply curve, which would give us a new price line. And then we would need to label all these areas. And now we're looking at before. And note that you can never do the before stuff until you do your shift. The shift has to come first before you try to label everything, or else you're going to screw yourself up. So before the curve, we're looking above the black price line and to the left of our demand curve to come up with the consumer surplus. So we just see area A. And then we're going to look at to the left of our supply curve and below the price line. So we would see area B and D. And then total, you would add them all up, A plus B plus D. And now after, we need to incorporate that we're using this new supply curve. So we have this new price line. So to figure out consumer surplus, we're looking above the red price line and to the left of demand. So we see area A, B, and C. And for producer surplus, we look below our red price line and to the left of supply. And we can see areas D and E. We add them all up to get our total economic surplus. And then we need to draw our conclusions. So consumers, we're looking at the difference between here and here. Originally we only had area A, now we get area A, B, and C, so consumers are better off. And they gained B and C. Producers, we originally had B and D, now we have D and E. You'll see that D is the same in both cases, so we need to draw ourselves an if statement. So let's say they're better if what we gained E is greater than what we lost B. And then society, we originally had A, B, and D, and now we have A, B, C, D, E. So society's better. And we gained C and E. So a lot of students start to really understand the whole supply and demand and why sometimes there's policies that work with one or the other when we get to this point, because it is a little more applied. If this policy works, this will help consumers, and it could possibly help producers. So this is something that the government would look towards trying to put in place because it would help the most amount of people. And you'll notice as you go through that these are the only 4 scenarios. We're never going to shift both supply and demand when we're talking about producer and consumer surplus, because that gets way too complicated. So we're only ever going to shift either supply or demand. So there can only be 4 possible scenarios. Supply can only increase or decrease, and demand can only increase or decrease. So I've gone through all 4 scenarios that we could possibly have. So hopefully this will help you understand a little bit better about why we start looking at some of these policies and why we look at using graphs for supply and demand.